in my office for like a half an hour. So, and then I ordered lunch.
Excuse me, everyone. Good evening, and thank you for coming tonight on a Friday to come out and join us at this City Planning Committee meeting. My name is Candy Vasquez. I'm the chair to the Land Use, City Planning, and Landmarks Committee. Here tonight, we're having a rezoning committee meeting as well. Tonight is a joint committee where we're going to be receiving the recommendation from the rezoning committee task force. We're going to be discussing, and I would appreciate if everybody will have respect to the committee, the members, yourselves, just like we're just here to have a discussion. And we will be having the recommendations from the committee, the task force. And based on that, then we're going to open it up very briefly to have some questions or any comments, and then from there we're going to make a decision. So I would appreciate if anybody has their passion, because we're all passionate about this. You know, we all care about our community. We all care about what happens to East Harlem. So just understand that we're all here to make a collective, well-informed decision, and at the same time a respectful decision for the betterment of this community. So with that, I'm going to turn over the committee meeting over to our chair of the rezoning task force, to Sean Henry.
Hey. I didn't know Right. So, good evening, everyone. My name is LaShawn Henry. I'm the chair of the rezoning task force. I think what we're going to do right now is we're going to briefly have our consultant, George Jane, go over the scope of the area that is supposed to be rezoned and talk about the density and all the other questions and the height and all the other questions that we've had throughout this process. Okay?
Sure. Okay, great. Yeah. Grab that first slide. Okay. I'm going to sit sideways like this. Okay, so you got the front one, that would be better.
Oh, shoot.
All right.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
We're out of order, and I want to make a correction. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda? Thank you, Holly.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. So Candy asked me to put together some materials describing the rezoning that has been proposed by the Department of City Planning, and then to drill down into some of the details. I thought the best way of doing this was to compare what DCP had proposed with what was in the East Harlem Neighborhood Plan, of which many of you were a part of. So the rezoning area, DCP's rezoning area, is this black line. It is now shown on top of the rezoning areas recommended in the East Harlem Neighborhood Plan. It leaves out First Avenue, it leaves out the area south of 104th Street, it leaves out the area on Madison Avenue. In the East Harlem Neighborhood Plan, all of these red areas were identified for mandatory inclusionary housing, so that if new development happened there, they would have to have affordable housing as a part of it. That also meant that it had to be upzoned. The yellow areas were areas that were identified for kind of conservation zoning, height-limited zoning that matched the context that was there. The blue areas were public sites, and then the black line is the DCP boundary. Now, it's much smaller. That's really the biggest difference between the proposals, is that DCP really focused in on a much smaller area. So within that study area, within that smaller area, how are DCP's proposal and the East Harlem Neighborhood Plan different? Well, really, it's in these two areas. The other areas are largely the same. 116th Street mostly is the same. Lexington is mostly the same. 2nd Avenue is the same. It's 3rd Avenue and Park Avenue where there are big differences. And then there's a bunch of little differences, and I'll actually go into each one of those at the end. Okay, so 3rd Avenue is currently zoned for, it's called R8A. R8A produces a building that looks kind of like this. 10 to 12 stories tall, 6 FAR, and there's no affordable housing. If you look along 3rd Avenue right now, you see a bunch of these buildings that have been built recently. The East Harlem Neighborhood Plan recommended an R9, which would look something like this. It would be about 14 stories, but it could be a little taller, and it would have at least 25% of the floor area in affordable housing. The city came back with a building like this, R10, which is a 12 FAR district. It will produce at least 23 stories, it could be taller, and at least 25% of the units in affordable housing. Now, it needs to be, and here's a comparison between the sites. This is what you can do under current zoning. This is the size of the building, the number of units, the affordable units. This is the East Harlem Neighborhood Plan recommendation, and this is the DCP proposal. And so you get more units in the DCP proposal, but you also get a much bigger building. So I am actually, one of the important things about this is that in this previous one, the existing building over here is left out. It's saying that, well, that building is not being redeveloped. But in reality, what happens is typically developers will buy the unused development rights from those buildings that stay and allow you to build a taller building. So in reality, while this is what they can do as of right, they will likely do something like this, which is bigger. Essentially, you take the unused floor area from here, you put it on top over here, and you have taller buildings, taller and larger buildings. This is what's proposed, something like this. This is on the Upper East Side, 3rd Avenue and 90th Street. This building is so tall because it transferred all the floor area from these tenements. Likewise, here's 92nd Street and 1st Avenue, 91st Street and 1st Avenue. Okay. That's a big change. Much higher density proposed along 3rd Avenue. Along Park Avenue, this is the southern part of Park Avenue. They proposed a R9 level of density down here, or an R10 from, I think it's 118th Street one. Again, it's a much higher density, and this is what you can do there now. What's proposed is a much higher density from DCP. Northern Park Avenue, up here, has this MX district, which is a mixed-use district that allows all different kinds of uses to be mixed in the same building, on the same lot. It encourages this, requires the bottom portion of the building to be in non-residential uses so that you actually get jobs that come out of this. This is what you can do now in these districts. They're manufacturing, or what they call C8, which is for automobile repair and filling stations now. And so you can't do much on them now. These areas along here, the area is colored purple right now. You can do a building like this, but with the rezoning you can do something like this. Along this side, the east side of Park Avenue, you can do a much bigger building. And another 12 FAR district, going essentially from here to... Now there are many smaller differences, and I'm going to go through each one by one because they're all part of your recommendations. So, 127th Street. There is, during urban renewal, 127th Street between Park Avenue and Lexington Avenue was vacated, meaning they took it off the map. But you could actually remap a street there. Actually, the East Harlem Neighborhood Plan didn't say anything about this because this is a very fine detail, and the East Harlem Neighborhood Plan didn't get into that kind of detail. But it was part of the Park Avenue rezoning recommendations. And the idea here is that it does two things. Number one, you're putting all of this floor area in this area. You need more capacity on your roads, otherwise you're going to have too much congestion. And it also breaks up this development site right here into two separate zoning lots, which will mean that the buildings won't be as large. So another thing that they did, if you notice up here, this part was cut out of the rezoning. That includes the Community District 10 sanitation garage, the Con Ed facility, and Arc Rehabilitation Center. It's being left as an M1 district, which is a 2 FAR district. I have heard that these uses that are there right now are not consistent with the future of Park Avenue, and that this area should be rezoned so that development pressures come here and these uses are relocated elsewhere. Public sites. The school at 127th and Park Avenue, and the sanitation parking lot, or a cleaning facility, they were not rezoned. They were carved out of the rezoning. The East Harlem Neighborhood Plan suggested that they be rezoned for high-density residential uses so that they could be 100% affordable housing. They were carved out.
I'm sorry, all questions, please hold on until the end of the presentation and after we open it up to the public. Thank you.
But DCP carved them out. Essentially, they told us that they were carving them out because there was no plan for those sites yet, and if they ever developed a plan for them, they would be rezoned. Eugene McCabe Playfield here, and the Carter Hospital Center, they have been rezoned. The East Harlem Neighborhood Plan carved them out. They said, we don't need to rezone the ball field. We don't need to rezone the play field. We don't need to rezone the hospital, which was just built in 2013. But DCP has suggested they be rezoned R10, the highest density possible. R10 on a new playground might very well mean development at some point.
Could you repeat that, please?
Yeah, louder.
Yeah, sure. So it's conspicuous that they put R10 zoning on a playground. Its playground is what's called a jointly operated playground. It's operated by both the Parks Department and the Department of Education. They did this recently at 96th Street, and they're building an enormous tower there.
With your support.
He's a consultant.
Not my support.
I'm talking to the board.
Okay, so the Park Avenue rezoning recommendation said carve it out. The East Harlem Neighborhood Plan said carve it out, and they are mapping R10 on top of the playground. There's no specific plan for it, but they're rezoning it anyway, and that should be. It's notable.
So the will of the community doesn't count.
Guys, please,
No, just in terms of process, this is a proposal, right? This is a proposal that Department of City Planning has given to a study and given to the community board, and the community board here is going to vote on this proposal and make recommendations.
They need to modify it.
So on NYCHA, they are proposing to map what are called commercial overlays. Commercial overlays don't really change very much about what's going on NYCHA, but it essentially says that on the avenues, if somebody wants to build a store or some sort of commercial use, it will be allowed. Right now, you can have no commercial uses on NYCHA, and this would allow for commercial infill. Now, the East Harlem Neighborhood Plan actually has a conflict here. The specific land use and zoning recommendation was voted down by the steering committee, but there is a line in the economic development section which says that it may be an opportunity for non-residential development on NYCHA Estate. And the 2013 Park Avenue rezoning recommendations mapped the commercial overlay on one NYCHA estate with Jackie Robinson houses.
Where's that located?
Yeah, it's up here, at 127th and Lexington.
28.
Thank you. Okay, the intersection of 116th Street and Lexington. So, this area right here, they accepted all of the recommendations from the plan, except for this intersection, and not even the entire intersection, just half the block around the subway station. And they said, there's a subway station here. Subway stations are good places to put higher density, and so instead of the R7D, which is a 5.6 FAR, DCP said you could get an R9 here, an 8.5 FAR, so a bigger building around the subway station. I've heard that this might be okay, but if in fact there is higher density here, the subway stairs and elevators that they would need to put in would have to come off the sidewalk and into the building, so that the sidewalk would be larger and would be able to handle more pedestrian traffic. 125th Street Special District. That's up here. The three corners around the Metro North station, they are proposing to upzone to a 12 FAR district, the highest, from an 8 FAR district. The East Harlem Neighborhood Plan and the Park Avenue rezoning recommendations did not touch this area because it was just remapped in 2008. I've heard that density may be, if you're going to have density anywhere in the district, the intersection right around the Metro North station might be the place for it. But I've also heard that there's a landmark at that intersection, the Corn Exchange Building, which has just been done. That's true, but it has landmark protection. So what would likely happen is that any excess floor area would be transferred to the site just north of it, and so the site just north of it would be enormous. So that maybe that Corn Exchange Building should be cut out. I think that's for discussion with you all. South side of 124th Street between Park and Lex. This is just a half block right here. It was just left out. Everything around it is being rezoned, but it was left into an R72. An R72 is what they call a height factor district. It allows for tall buildings surrounded by open space. And this particular half block is essentially developed with a lot of commercial development. So this half block, the south side of 124th Street between Park and Lexington, has a lot of commercial development on it, which is inconsistent with an R72 district. So the idea is that you should either extend the zoning across the street or the zoning proposed on Lexington, both of which would trigger MIH in case any development happened there and there would be affordable housing on this little patch lot. Commercial overlay on the west side of Madison between 124th and 127th and 128th Street. This was a part of a recommendation in the East Harlem rezoning, the Park Avenue rezoning. It's essentially would allow for commercial use on that part of that block. Okay, those were all of the differences in the map, but there are some differences in the text, which I will go through one at a time. The way the special district is designed is that parking is meant to be demand-driven as opposed to required. So right now in most of East Harlem, if you build a development and it's large enough, you have to have on-site parking. You have to have parking for your residents, either 40 or 50%, depending on the district you're in. And they're saying that no accessory residential parking is required. However, if a developer wants to put it in, they can. Commercial parking garages of any size are allowed as of right. They've also done this with the physical culture, which means gyms, yoga studios, martial arts studios, they're as of right. Currently in New York City, you need to get a special permit from the Board of Standards and Appeals. They're saying that we want to make that an easier use to put in here. No hotels are allowed in the special district until at least 4,000 units of housing are built. This is fascinating. I've never seen them do something like this. The idea is that hotels sometimes compete with residential uses, and they're saying, well, we're not going to let hotels compete with residential uses. This is about housing. And so they're not going to permit any new hotels to go in the area until at least 4,000 units of
In that
housing are built.
specific rezoned area,
Yes, in that specific rezoned area. That is correct.
but not across the street.
We're gonna ask that questions are taken after the presentation.
I didn't ask anything. I
Well,
said
statements,
comments.
questions,
Right.
I asked
Thank
you.
you.
There is a new tower form permitted. So
There's a lot of information being given.
there is.
There's a lot of information being given.
All right, when you're listening to the conversation, please, I gave the house rules in advance, just so we can move along on this whole presentation and on the committee meetings, and this way there's enough time for the comments, and then the recommendation, and then the vote, please.
Okay, so this one is very technical. Essentially, what they've done is they've created a new tower form which can be mapped in the area. The idea is everything I showed you is up till now, and the photographs are called tower on base building form, which is defined a certain way and it looks a certain way. What they're saying now is that you can build your tower a little thinner and taller in this area, which is a new building form. It was completely unexpected. We didn't know about it until the text came out. They didn't tell us about it ahead of time. And it's something that I'm concerned about, because you could have much taller buildings without any more affordable housing with the tower form that they're proposing. Okay, the enhanced commercial overlay. So that was something that some of the board members have spoken about. They don't have a specific enhanced commercial overlay here, but they have many commercial district protections, including limits of curb cuts, limits of residential lobbies, transparency requirements for storefronts so you don't have blank walls. They're good basic provisions that are generically positive in terms of making a vibrant commercial corridor. They also have this more flexible of mixing of uses within buildings. Right now, it's very segregated within the mixed-use district. You need to have your manufacturing down here, your commercial here, and your residential up here. You now can mix commercial and residential on the same floor, which is interesting. I don't know if that's significant or not, but it's something that I just point out. Street wall requirements on Park Avenue. So Park Avenue rezoning recommendations allowed for a flexible building form because you have a viaduct there. What they've said is no, you're going to require a street wall there, and that's good for urban design, and we'll deal with it. So I don't know if that's the right answer or not, but that's what they're doing. That is what I have for you all. I can answer the board members' specific questions if I've gone through anything too quickly, and I'm sure I did. But if there's anything else you want to know, let me know.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to the rezoning committee based on from the presentation that George James had presented just recently. This has been presented over and over for the past few months, and the task force has been formed specifically just to work on this this whole topic of the rezoning. And we've taken a lot into consideration, a lot of time and efforts and nights has been conducted meetings over and over. We sent out numerous of postings outside in the street as well as emails and putting the word out there. So the rezoning committee, task force committee, has been working diligently, and LaShawn then will turn it over to her so that she can continue.
So at this time, before we talk about any of the task force's recommendations, I want to open it up to the public for at least 2 or 3 comments or questions directly relating to the presentation that was just shown. Can you stand up? I see a hand, but I don't see a person. You stand up in the back.
State your name too, please, for the record.
State your name.
Okay, Esther DeVore, Taino Towers, and CB11 Harlem Plumbers. First question is, will this be first rights to the community for property, like say stores, after school programs and everything? Plus, will it be low income for people that's living there so they don't be pushed out and separated from their families?
Okay, so in terms of the affordability requirements for most of this is the MIH requirement, which is different options. Mandatory inclusionary housing. It's the zoning phrase that will be, or the zoning program that is mapped on top of this. Essentially, 25% of the units, the most common, popular option is 25% of the units would be affordable at an average of 60% of AMI.
So what is your telling? Like how much? $25,000 on up?
It depends on the size of the household, right? The number of people in the household, but it's going to be higher than that. I don't have the AMI
Right,
numbers.
these are for new developments.
Yeah, but how are the people that was pushed out their apartments, and then they're gonna come back into these apartments, then they won't be able to move in them, and they stuck in a rat trap?
60% of the AMI is around $50,000.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that means the people that retired, that moved out, they won't be able to move back in their community. So you're separating everybody. So the only
Okay.
person gonna be in there is the upper middle class and the rich.
Upper white middle class.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank me what? You didn't answer my question.
There-
Damn sure didn't, and they won't.
The question, I'm not sure what your question is. You're
What you
saying,
wanna do about
are
the people that's pushed out?
well, the people, I mean, there are going to be options, there are going to be opportunities.
homeless shelters.
Let me finish, you asked me to answer your question, so let me answer it. So there are going to be opportunities, you know, through the MIH in new developments where people who make less than 30% AMI, which is about about $18,000 to come back. Now, currently there are no subsidies for people who make lower than that. And we are working with our political officials and different organizations and agencies to make sure that we provide for those folks.
Because I know personally people 10 years ago that still lived in the rat trap that was supposed to be moving in, or in those developments that moved out, and they still is in a rat trap to this day. So I know about those stories. So I want to make sure that these people that is pushed out, that is doctors and lawyers, that just was up there in the hundreds, once they retired, they go down in the 25 because they was pushed out with their little packages and whatnot. So why should they been living high? And then since y'all coming with these programs, they have to move back down under their class.
I understand, thank you.
Yeah, because I'm pissed off.
Thank you, I understand that as well. What's your name?
My name is Leon Blygen, and I'm a homeowner on 120th Street, three-family homeowner on 120th Street between Park and Madison Avenue. And I've been attending these meetings now for about the last month or so. I really wasn't aware of all this rezoning stuff that was going on. And some people might say, well, you should be satisfied. You're a homeowner. You're collecting rents from people, and everything should be cool. But the nature of this nation has always been, from its inception, doublespeak. They talk with forked tongue to the Native American, and it's been doublespeak. I've heard a lot of stuff like affordable housing that's going to be permanent permanent for when? For how long? I'm saying all of that to say this. Forgive me.
Take your time, take your time, don't worry.
Get any points?
I said we were gonna be passionate, right? But we're gonna have respect for each other, so go ahead.
The deal is that I just lost my train of thought.
All right, well, when you find it again, we'll come back to you, okay? I'm gonna take, Jenny, you have it? The person behind, I'm sorry. Cool.
My name is Cecilia Grant. I'm street homeless. I'm from this neighborhood from 1978. I have been to HPD, CDC, and I keep asking you, where the hell do I fit in?
Yeah, tell me.
Okay? Where the hell do I fit into your plans?
Okay, so.
Where do I fit in? How many people is going to be displaced and how many homeless people are you going to place? Okay, I'm retired and I'm living in the streets and I'm still in this community. I put money into this community. Okay, so where do I fit in? And every time I get in front of y'all looking at me like I'm Klingon. Where do I fit in? Well, I'll be able to live here after 3 years and 3 months of volunteering and listening to this rezoning and coming to every meeting. You got a place for me? I'm retired. City workers don't make that much, and when you retire, you get less. I might be poor, but I'm rich in culture. I'm rich in this community, all right? Where do I fit in?
Thank you. So.
Thank you. Oh, no, I want to know if you're going to have an apartment for me. That's what I want.
Okay, so let me explain
Blasio was
to you
giving us 20.
so that we can kind of clarify where this proposal is coming from. This proposal is not the community board's proposal. This proposal is from the city. Let me finish. No, I'm sorry, do not interrupt me. I do not interrupt anyone who's speaking. This is the Department of City Planning's proposal. They have asked the community to review the proposal and make a recommendation. And that's what we're doing. We have held countless meetings in my task force every 2 weeks since the end of December to inform and engage the community. We have heard all of we've heard all of your issues. We have taken everything that you have said to us into consideration. This is where we live as well. This is not only your home, this is our home. Most of us live here. Okay, please. Most of us live here, and even if someone doesn't live here on this committee, we have had thoughtful, considerate conversations about our community, about this community.
I still haven't got an answer.
let me finish.
How many is going to be housed?
So part
That's my
of
question.
okay.
That's my question.
Cecilia, so part of the draft plan was that maybe 500 people would be displaced. We don't agree with that. That's what came out of DCP's plan. So that's the only answer I have for you. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you. But we've taken all those things into considerations, and as we talk about our recommendations, we will answer the questions that you have asked.
So take it down.
I'll go back to
Why
you,
you gotta
sir.
come up there?
All right, so just to piggyback on this individual's thought, where does he have to go, or she have to go? Where does she have to go? My understanding is that the affordable apartments that are being proposed to be put in place are only a small percentage of the total amount of apartments that are being built, 25%. And of that 25%, there's no guarantee for the people of East Harlem that they're going to even be eligible for one of those apartments, because it's a lottery system that draws on people from all over the city. So there's no guarantee for the folks from East Harlem. Which goes back to the point that I was trying to make from the beginning, which is that there's a bunch of double talk going on here, all right? The powers that be have targeted East Harlem and the East Harlems of this country and made a determination that they want to run the folks who have been inhabitants here for generations out of here.
Right.
And so my proposal to the board is to shut it all down, to be bold enough to not go for the okie doke. Because right now we're being told that these are the rules. The rules, we determine the rules. If we're a government of the people and by the people and for the people, then the people determine the rules. And the people of the community have to make the point that, you know what, nothing gets built. We'll sit in the streets. We'll sit in these buildings. You want to take these buildings down while we're sitting in them? We'll sit in these buildings. Now you might feel like I'm a homeowner, so what do I have to say about it? What do I have to lose? First of all, as the property value goes up, the taxes go up, all right? And then what they end up doing is telling you, you can't afford to even pay the taxes to stay here.
That's right.
All right? So all of us folks who are sitting on this board, who understand the okie doke, and the okie doke has been in existence from the beginning. We cannot go for the okie doke. We have to lay it down and put it on the line that you can't have this. You can't have this. Those who are the power brokers. It's my understanding. How many communities, Daisy? Communities of color did the mayor target?
South Bronx.
15 communities of color.
All of them.
15 communities of color that he determined that he wanted to have this rezoning so that he could build his, quote, affordable housing for the homeless or for people who are low income. How come he didn't take it to Midtown Manhattan?
Hello.
Why are they trying to create a Midtown Manhattan in Harlem?
Right.
Not only that, but I've always understood that Harlem was a village and it had village status. Did the village status change? If it's village status, then it's a whole different status than other places in the community.
It's illegal.
And so we have to put our foot down. I don't know what the vote is going to be tonight, but I think that the vote should be from this community board, no deal. No deal.
So, just to
500
speak on
people displaced on top of it.
displacement, we don't want to see anybody displaced, right? I mean, that is definitely the goal. We do not want to see anybody displaced.
But this whole situation is displacement.
Sir, let me finish. And so you had talked about the 25% under MIH, right? And you said that it would be a lottery. It would be a lottery, right? But anytime a development is built in a community, the community gets 50% preference in those development units. So I just want to make sure I got it. Let me finish. Like, I'm not going to be able to answer your question if you keep having these outbursts. All right, please be respectful. Okay, when you're speaking, I'm not. So please, when I'm speaking, please have respect. All right, so why it's not 100%? I don't know. I don't make those rules. This is what it has been, not to say that it is right, but this has been what we've been working under, all right? So
then we need to change the rules.
yeah,
I'm sorry, but we need to change the rules.
there are a lot of things that we need to do. All right, so I'm going to ask for one more question. The gentleman in the back.
No.
Come on.
The gentleman in the back.
You don't live in East Harlem. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Okay,
Just one
all right,
more question.
Marina.
That's
All right,
bullshit.
Marina, I'll come back to you. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Ryan Sheffield. I'm actually a new community board, Community Board 11. And my question is more for clarity. I don't know if development is preventable at this point, but my question is, to what standard ethically are we holding the developers? I've worked in Community Board 4, and I've seen developers have side doors, so the affordable housing units, those people go in the side doors. They're not allowed to use the main entrance. So my question is, to what standard are we going to hold these developers that are taking hold of our neighborhood? What ethical standards do we get to hold them to? How do we make those stipulations that they cannot discriminate and create these racist policies against our community when they start developing our neighborhood like that?
Okay.
And for affordable housing, how long are they contractually obligated to maintain 25% before they can slash it down? Or before, like, what are the guidelines for these developers that we're letting take seize of this neighborhood, our neighborhood?
Sure.
Please enlighten us.
So, mandatory inclusionary housing is a new thing. And what they're going to do is when you build in a mandatory inclusionary housing area, you have to have a deed restriction that requires 25% affordable housing on that property forever, as long as that building is standing. And you may not have ever heard of that because it hasn't existed in New York City before. It's a new law that was passed in 2016.
How recent was that law passed?
2016. Right, and so it's a new thing, and there aren't very many MIH areas that are mapped right now. So I can't even point to a building that has that right now. This is one of the first.
So East Harlem becomes the guinea pig for these developers.
There are a couple of others.
Right?
There are others.
New York as well.
Now
Where they at?
Yeah.
Tell me where.
there are small areas that are.
Small, but they got how many?
Guys, please let him answer the question.
So regarding your other question on the four door,
It's right on 120th Street, before the door.
so in theory, HPD is not supposed to approve any more projects like that, where you have segregated units within the building. HPD has to review a housing plan, and they have to approve a housing plan. However, you can still do something called off-site affordable housing under MIA, which means that you can take your affordable housing requirement and build it somewhere else within the community district. You have to produce 5% more affordable units when you do that. So there are penalties involved, and then you can't use subsidies like 421A. So there are penalties if you want to do that. However, that option still exists.
All right, thank you.
Thank
So
you for
I'm
answering my
gonna go two
question.
more, Marina and this gentleman.
So I gotta say, I know that you guys have worked really hard, East Harlem Neighborhood Plan people, for a year and a half and all this stuff. This is not an either or. It's not either East Harlem Neighborhood Plan or City's Plan. We can always say no. I have been to some of these meetings. I just got tired with the rezoning task force because you're doing the same thing. You guys talk and then you give us a minute or two to ask questions or to make a statement. You don't answer the question. The city's not here today. Why isn't the city here answering questions? Why wasn't the city at the rezoning task force meetings answering questions? This is not your plan, right? You even admitted that they threw you for a loop with a few things they threw in there at the last minute, and they're not here today to answer any questions about it. They put you on the spot, and you're going to have to answer to us. That's not fair. This is our community.
Right.
You have nothing in writing from the city guaranteeing anything that you're talking about. No guarantees for jobs, parks, green space, nothing, nothing, nothing. It's all about negotiation. You said to Ms. DeVore, right? We're working. There's nothing in writing. You don't have to say yes. You don't have to say yes with conditions. You can say no.
Hello.
You can say no. This is racist rezoning. They're doing it in East New York, South Bronx, Inwood. They're trying to push us out. LaShawn, you know. 30% of AMI is the lowest they may be willing to go, because again, nothing is in writing. And 30% of AMI means zero to this community. Okay? Because we, the people who need affordable housing, do not earn 30%. So you give us 25% units in a building, it still means zero to the people who need housing. All right? 100,000 applications per apartment building, right? That's like 10,000 to 1 chance that any of us are going to make it in there. Our credit checks, because we can't afford minimum wage. They're going to promise jobs now. The city is starting a new job task workforce program in East Harlem, right? So what do those things do? They produce minimum wage job training, right? our children are not gonna be able to afford to live in these new apartments.
They pushing
That's
us
not the
out.
kind of job training they're talking about. The mayor's being put on the spot for school segregation. He's doing nothing about desegregating our schools so that our students grow up and graduate and be able to earn enough to live in these shiny new buildings. These buildings are ugly. 68 stories you approved last month. That's shameful.
Yes, they
That's
did.
shameful.
Yes, they did.
96th Street.
They ain't talking about that.
Just listen to your hearts. Do the right thing and just say no. It's just that simple. Just
And
say
we're not
no.
included in it either.
No.
They approved it and we're not included.
Thank you, Marina.
That's
Yes?
unfair.
Thank you very
That's
much.
right.
What's your name?
I'll
Your
go.
name?
Never
My name is
answer.
Ray Rogers, and I live on East River Landing, here in East Harlem.
Ray, step up, please.
Can you state your name again? We can't hear you.
And speak a little louder, please.
My name is Ray Rogers. I live in East River Landing on 109th and First Avenue. I certainly appreciate all the comments made here. I think they're terrific. I appreciate what you're all going through. If I'm talking about the zoning policies, they come directly from one source in the city. It comes from the Real Estate Board of New York down to the mayor and the city council. That's where it's coming from, by these plans. And history has shown us, whether it be Williamsburg, whether it be Chinatown, whether it be Harlem, wherever it is, where a group comes together and does real planning for their community, wiped right off the map.
Right.
All right? Wiped right off the map. And as people say, this location, no place for poor people, working people to live, the communities that they created, it's gone. I understand recently they even wanted to change, I think somebody suggested changing the name of Harlem.
Yeah.
Yorkville. Yorkville. What kind of shit is
Let me
that?
just say about the real estate.
7,500 signatures.
Okay, I'd like to ask one question, and again, I respect all of you up there, and I'm not here to give a big speech. How many of you up there, and they're sitting at the front, or in the audience, have read the book Zoned Out?
That's what we
That's
are.
what's up.
Okay, zoned out. And that's what the Real Estate Board of New York is doing to all poor and working people. They're zoning us out, and moderate. I mean, you're going to have to be rich,
Right.
okay? We don't need another high-rise. We don't need them in Harlem, don't need them in East Harlem, we don't need them in Williamsburg, we don't need them in Chinatown, we don't need them in any of these places. They're just making a bunch of billionaire bullies and racketeers, which they are at the Real Estate Board of New York, bullies and racketeers, making them richer and richer at all of our expense. And thank you very much for your work. I hope we send them a message from this group here.
Yes.
Take it and shove it,
Up your ass.
okay, wherever you think I'm talking about. Thank you.
Right. They not even hiring for the police.
All right, so we're gonna, thank you. We're gonna,
Argue.
oh, Kimberly? Is Kimberly here?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So, I'm from the New York Academy of Medicine. I brought paper. I'm from the New York Academy of Medicine. I brought 15 copies of like a more full version of this. But I'll try and be very brief. Basically, the Academy, if you don't know, we've been around since 1847. We're located on 103rd and 5th, and we try and promote health for people living in cities. We definitely consider housing policy health policy. Melissa Marc, speaker, asked us to be part of the steering committee, and we helped to develop recommendations in the neighborhood plan around health. Around health and aging. And I'm here today just to give you our assessment of the draft environmental impact statement, or the draft environmental impact study that goes along with this plan. There's a public health chapter in that. And so I just wanted to tell you sort of our summary in response to that chapter. Chapter 18 of the draft environmental impact study concludes that the proposed rezoning would not result in significant adverse public health impacts, that it would not result in unmitigated significant impacts to air quality, noise, water quality, or hazardous materials.
This lady is
I'm just telling you what it says in the
I
statement.
got another assessment.
And it says,
So, ladies and gentlemen, as the board chair, I'm going to ask you to respectfully allow her to finish her statement. She has an important statement which we reviewed, and I wanted to make sure that she lets the public know from a health perspective where Niam has come to the conclusion. She hasn't even talked about the conclusion. She's telling you what it is now.
I'm telling you what's in the study, the DCP commission,
So what I would
to say what the
suggest-
impacts are. So just to
I
get
know
to the
you're trying
point.
to give them some
Yep.
background, so get right straight to it.
Basically, in our assessment, the public health chapter doesn't address any of the real health impacts of the plan.
think of as, the real determinants of health: education, housing, employment, socioeconomic status, discrimination. And we feel that the draft environmental impact statement on public health significantly underestimates the potential negative health impacts of proposed zoning in the East Harlem community, and that there are many unidentified needs for mitigating these negative public health impacts. And I'll just say that the primary force that we believe is really going to create negative health impacts is the displacement. And there's been some discussion here today about what the estimate is of the displacement. And just to be the person who actually calls out the number, that the number that is in the draft environmental impact study is 27. They estimate that 27 people and 11 apartments, 11 domestic units would directly be displaced. And we feel that that is dramatic, a very significant underestimate. And
Did you hear what she said? She said an underestimate. Please be quiet so I can hear it. Thank you, please.
It's a significant underestimate, and I won't read you the very long paragraph. This will be on public record. If anybody wants a paper copy or an email copy, I'm happy to get it to you. But there are, there are significant negative health impacts, anything from like stress, increased heart disease, diabetes, you name it. And then, obviously when people become homeless, when they actually lose their apartments and can't find somewhere else to live, there are tremendous negative health impacts to that. And so I just want to put that out there, that we read that chapter, and we feel like it really doesn't fairly represent the potential negative harms to this community's health from the proposed plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I want to go to the Marcus Garvey Park Alliance and ask Connie. I know you submitted a testimony. If you want to speak on some of the recommendations that the Park Alliance has made, you're welcome to do so at this time. If not, it will be part of the record.
Well, I submitted it in writing so that we wouldn't have to take up time and so that you would have documented what our position was. I think it's too long to read.
Okay.
The only thing that I will say is that I think the proposal doesn't look at the public realm realistically. I think that the city needed to put boots on the ground and walk these streets. We did, Joanna from Landmark East Harlem, we actually walked some of these streets up and down, looking to see where the soft sites were, what was needed, what was left out. That's not all in there. But I think the plan is, the city's plan basically is throwing out a not well thought out plan. There were no boots on the ground. There's nobody walking from street to street. I think the areas they left out of the plan are as significant as the areas they put in the plan.
Okay, thank you. Landmarks East Harlem, would you like
Do you
to?
want to say something? Do you want me to do that too?
Can you say your name? I'm not sure.
Landmark East Harlem, I'm a founding member of Landmark East Harlem, as is Joanna, who's on the board of Civitas. Landmark East Harlem was put together really as an opportunity to have an ongoing voice in this conversation, and really to look at, we went from, again, we walked the streets looking at buildings, looking at sites that needed to be protected. During the East Harlem neighborhood planning sessions, every single session, the same thing came up over and over again, and that was preserving and protecting the existing culture of East Harlem. So landmarking is simply a tool to attempt to do that. The position that Landmark East Harlem presented to you, written by Chris Cirillo from Lot Development Corporation, is very similar to what the Alliance came up with. And we're looking at the East Harlem neighborhood plan, what the steering committee recommended, and seeing positive impacts there, and looking at the Department of City Planning's proposal, and there's a huge disconnect between the two.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I want to just open it up right now for Matthew from the Borough President's Office. If you guys want to say something on behalf of Gail Brewer, I know she will be having public hearings on this matter in the next week or so, but if you want to.
Yes, so I will say,
State your
sorry,
name
my
for the
name,
public,
yep.
please. Who are you?
My name is Ahmed Tigani. I'm an urban planner. I'm the Assistant Director of Land Use at the Manhattan Borough President's Office. I've been part of the Borough President's team that has participated in the East Harlem Neighborhood Plan, a separate neighborhood initiative that works to develop a broad, far-reaching vision for the neighborhood. That being said, when it comes to this application, the Borough President, as many people know, has a place in the Uniform Land Use Review process. Our time to opine on the application will come after the Community Board submits their recommendation. As part of that process, and for neighborhood rezonings, we traditionally will hold a public hearing. Now, many of you may have gotten notices from other elected officials that are facing the same question we face right now, which is related to this blackout period that happens during election years. So we are currently getting the permission to send out notices about this, but we are going to have a public hearing. There will be notices going out once we get permission to send out this notice. It's tentatively scheduled for Thursday, July 13th, 6:30 at the Silberman School for Social Work. The instructions will also include how to submit testimony in advance, plus a slew of other instructions and details about how the agenda and the evening will work. But we will hold a public hearing. Our office is already and has been and continues to be available to answer questions or hear from members of the public about this application. I am happy to give my contact information out now. My email is T as in tiger, I as in igloo, G as in garage, ANI@manhattanbp.nyc.gov. I feel like most of you have it, that's why you're not writing it down. And my phone number is 212-669-3223. You can also find that information on the Borough President's website. So thank you again for those here making comments. Thank you for the Community Board for holding this hearing, and we look forward to talking to you about the application when it's our turn to.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so we're going to thank you to the public. We're going to move on.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. My name is Chelsea Kelly. I'm here on behalf of Council Speaker Melissa Marc Viverito. I just wanted to acknowledge our presence and make sure that everyone is aware that we're listening to everyone as it moves through the public approval process. We will also be there when the Borough President holds their hearing. We will hold a hearing at the council, and we're taking everything very seriously.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
So now I want to thank the public for their questions and their comments. I'm going to read a statement that I prepared on behalf of the task force, the rezoning task force. Over the past few years, Community Board 11 has invested a considerable amount of time and resources into engaging the community and planning for the future. Through our initial engagement and planning along Park Avenue in 2013 to the East Harlem Neighborhood Plan Steering Committee, and more recently through our rezoning task force. We've helped create a vision for our community that acknowledges existing growth and change, but emphasizes the protection of existing community residents and neighborhood character. Through the East Harlem Neighborhood Plan, we developed a simple rezoning framework and that embraced the city's new mandatory inclusionary housing, MIH program, supporting the minimum upzone needed to trigger MIH. This would require affordable housing in every new development in the rezone areas, but minimize the added density and help to preserve community character and stimulate local businesses and economic growth. Can you turn that off, please? Thank you. We suggested upzoning all avenues and 116th Street, intentionally deciding to spread a minimum increase in density throughout a large area, rather than a higher density rezoning in a limited area. We determined this would allow for development of affordable housing throughout the district, but not permit new development inconsistent with the existing community context. The Community Board and the East Harlem Neighborhood Plan Steering Committee were disappointed to learn that after 2 years of developing a community-based rezoning proposal, the Department of City Planning did not embrace all of the goals. While their proposal does rezone the community with the goal of developing affordable housing and economic stimulation, it does not preserve the existing character of the neighborhood. DCP has instead decided to allow the highest density residential districts allowed under state and city law in a limited geography on Park Avenue and 3rd Avenue, rather than spreading out a minimum upzoning across the neighborhood. DCP left out the area south of 104th Street, all of 1st Avenue, as well as the lower stretches of Madison Avenue, all of which were included in the East Harlem Neighborhood Plan. The need to develop affordable housing and job creation is not just an East Harlem goal. It is clearly a citywide goal. But the Department of City Planning must approach this goal without impacting the community excessively and respecting its existing character. DCP instead chose to extend the same density found in the Upper East Side into East Harlem. Community Board 11 feels strongly that the proposal as it does not conform to our core values, the East Harlem Neighborhood Plan, and the CB11 Park Avenue recommendations. And CB11 has developed the following recommendations. I'm going to now turn it over to my Vice Chair, Jeremiah.
Good evening to everyone here. I am happy to see the room full. I want to talk about right now, the gentleman, I believe Mr. Rogers, had mentioned the Zoned Out book. It was a book that was early on recommended by the East Harlem Rezoning Task Force. It was required reading. Engaged in that. Found it very compelling read, and one thing that stuck out to me is the fact that, as you had stated earlier, that we see historically whenever there's been a neighborhood planning process that has often been wiped out, right? The city has always seems to have ignored it, saying thank you for all of your years of work, but we're deciding to go in this direction anyway, right? That is precisely what we have here. We have had years and years of public engagement, of community stakeholders coming to the table, elected officials, local elected officials, community organizers, private nonprofit research organizations, community residents engaging in workshop after workshop, balancing competing interests and tensions, knowing that we also have a wide spectrum of incomes in our community, but also that we have the second highest concentration of public housing in the nation. So we're looking at all of those things, and we're coming together to do a process over the years. And what we found is, just as the chair of the Rezoning Task Force just stated in her testimony, that the DC proposal as it currently stands, it wholly ignores the community planning that we've engaged in, just as it did, as you stated, in Williamsburg, and just as it did in other areas as well, right? So that right now is not lost on us. And I'm now going to go through some recommendations which have been the process of this years-long balancing goal in the community. All right, and these are the things that we have determined, Community Board 11 in partnership with the public, all of our constituents, and these are things that I know to you all are missing from the DCP proposal, right? So again, we are discussing right now what the city has proposed. And here are the counterbalancing things that the community board in conjunction with the community has laid out. So when we talk about housing, which is a major concern in the community and which is paramount in anybody's stability, Community Board 11, we strongly feel that there needs to be a renewal of anti-displacement legal services contracts. Many individuals who have been involved in it know it principally as the Tenants' Rights Coalition, which is formed by a partnership. The city has contracted the Legal Aid Society and Legal Services of New York, to engage in anti-displacement services for those areas that the mayor had proposed for rezoning. East Harlem is one of them. Now, we want a renewal of those contracts, but as a housing practitioner, I can tell you that the contracts miss the mark and they stymie the ability of legal services providers to provide true anti-displacement representation. Okay? So our demand is that there be a renewal of the anti-displacement legal services contracts, but with realistic benchmarks determined by current housing law practitioners that enable thoughtful and effective group representation in order to harmonize the city's rhetoric, the mayor's rhetoric with providing anti-displacement services, with reality, right? Actually providing effective representation. So we demand that those contracts be renewed but renegotiated on terms that actually allow us to meet the objectives that are stated that the city allegedly wants to fulfill. We also, as also stated in the Movimiento para Justicia en el Barrio, the community group, their 10-point plan, Community Board 11 agrees wholeheartedly that we need an increase in the number of HPD inspectors as well as an increase in the number of convenient times and dates for tenants to have their apartments inspected pursuant to complaints about conditions in their apartment. Community Board 11, also in conjunction with the 10-point plan, believes strongly that there should be an assurance of adequate follow-up on whether the violations were cured, all right, by the landlord. Efficiently issuing fines where the violations go uncorrected beyond the time permitted by law. Importantly, HPD must increase its response to complaints regarding emergency conditions, such as lack of heat or hot water, right? And as well as promptly fine for those violations, and engaging in the HPD emergency repair program, deploying it to make those repairs since the landlord is not making those repairs, and fining and billing those repairs to the landlord. We agree wholeheartedly with Movimiento's plan in that respect. Also, we agree with Movimiento's 10-point plan that we should greatly increase the HPD outreach on HPD's role in addressing housing maintenance issues, to create and publicize an HPD website with consolidated user-friendly information regarding housing maintenance issues. We want the public to be as informed as possible on their rights when it comes to conditions in their apartments, and to have an easy to access and understandable way to show them how that they can remedy that or gain help in correcting those conditions. There should be an increased proactive outreach by the city to identify landlords who could benefit from subsidies or refinancing, for example, refinancing of mortgages, to bring unregulated buildings into a rent regulation scheme. So for example, if you are a small landlord that has less than 6 units in a building, there's a good chance that you have unregulated housing. All right, they're technically market apartments, and you could charge whatever it is, whatever rent you deem to be acceptable, right, what you wanted. But we want to have an identification scheme to try and bring as many of those as well to protect the tenants, because many tenants who live in those buildings as well historically are low income as well and long-term Harlem residents. We also want an establishment of a citywide certification of no harassment. Right? So this is a certification that a landlord would have to attain to certify that there has been no harassment in any of their buildings that contain regulated units before being able to apply for any demolition permits or deregulation permits. At a minimum, if there is not a citywide establishment of this program, CB11 calls for the expansion of the current program to include all of Community District 11, all of East Harlem. Okay, even the areas that are outside of the proposed rezoning, because we know that they will be affected as well with corresponding increases in land value. The establishment of any MIH should be deeper, more affordable to address the needs of our community. The Community Board 11's position for many years has been 50-30-20 MIH, which means that 50% of any new development would have to be affordable. 20% of AMI, or 20% of the new units would have to be affordable to an upper limit of 30% AMI. So 20% of the new units have to be reserved for low and very low income folks. 30% of the additional affordable units would have to be resolved for the middle income bands, right? Much of our community lives in that band as well, in those bands as well. 42% of our community lives between 31 and 120% of AMI, okay? That might sound like a lot, it's not. Those are a lot of people too who are at 115% of AMI are working folks who are severely rent burdened as well. So 30% of any new development would speak to those income bands. It is also firmly our position that any public land that is used for development must be reserved for 100% affordable residential housing, which which also includes any NYCHA infill process. Furthermore, it is CB11's position that the NYCHA residents must be engaged in that process, must be consulted and sign off on the use of any infill procedures as well. CB11 also stands against, as George had mentioned before, there are, as it currently stands under MIH, if a developer doesn't have all of the affordable housing required under MIH in that same building, you can offset it with some off-site building, another building. CB11 stands against that as well, because that encourages segregation. All right, it encourages segregation along income lines, and often along racial lines as well. We also strongly believe that there should be priority given to local nonprofit developers in all RFPs for any development on public land. All right, so we want this public land as a unique opportunity for us to speak to 100% affordability, and also to bring into that local nonprofit developers who have been engaged in the community, who have as their goal not profit, but rather their missions. Right? We also firmly believe that any city and state subsidies that are used to incentivize deeper affordability, that the city must ensure that those that are directed towards housing preservation and deeper MIH affordability continue in perpetuity, regardless of federal budget allocations, right? We live in the era of Donald Trump, Republican-controlled Congress. We hear all the time about cuts that are being made to a lot of programs that help the vast majority of Americans, low income, moderate income Americans. So we're demanding that any subsidies that are set aside to meet these goals of actual affordability for the East Harlem community is insulated, that they are insulated against potential federal budget cuts. Okay? Open space, that includes open spaces too. I apologize. Any subsidies for preservation of affordable housing, new development, and open spaces. We also demand that the M11 sanitation garage that is proposed for relocation must be in a fully enclosed facility with updated technology. The borough president recently released something as well in that exact same, adopting that position, rejecting the application for the relocation of the M11 garage without those conditions being met, right? We've talked a lot, if any of you has come to any of the meetings where we discussed the sanitation garage and the proposal to move the M11 garage, we know that all around the city, in more affluent areas, there are state-of-the-art facilities, fully enclosed, that mitigate any impact, any health impacts on their community. That the city must also relocate the M10 sanitation garage to comport with the fair share mandate. So right now we have a sanitation garage that is officially a Community District 10, Central Harlem sanitation garage, but that is located in our community, in Community District 11. So that gives us two sanitation garages. We already know, a lot of us, about the widespread health, particularly asthma, for example, with a lot of congestion that's contributed with as well with the sanitation facilities. So we firmly believe that that should be relocated to Central Harlem under the fair share mandate. Also demanding increased funding for asthma treatment centers in our community. George touched on a lot of this in his presentation, but just to summarize some of the important bullet points as well when it comes to any rezoning. It must be done pursuant, again, to the community plan, not the DCP proposal. The DCP proposal requires, or asks for, is proposing an upzoning that is too dense for us. Again, it is proposed to look like the East Harlem area, or rather Upper East Side area, and we're not getting enough affordable housing in exchange for that, right? So we're recommending a maximum of an R9 or R9 equivalent upzoning. Okay, the only exception being the 125th Street Special District, which George talked about, which we can support with its transportation networks and current design can support the slightly more dense building. Also recognize that this goes in conjunction with what I just stated earlier, that we want that zoning is the minimum amount needed to trigger mandatory inclusionary housing. But the mandatory inclusionary housing that Community Board 11 is talking about is a far cry from what the city's talking about. The city's talking about what everyone here is mad about, right? 75, 25%. and then averaging to 60% of AMI, which leaves the majority of our East Harlem community behind, right? So ours is the 50-30-20 model, which will encapsulate the vast majority of our East Harlem residents, right? We would require as well special permit application process for any proposal to build commercial parking garages, since we know that they are very disruptive, that they take up a lot of space, and produce very few jobs in reality. So we would want to subject any proposal to build commercial parking garages to a special permitting process that the public could weigh in on. An enhanced commercial district on 116th Street, limiting the size of storefronts. Right? So we want to ensure that small businesses can thrive by limiting the width of the storefronts on the streets to keep, for example, big box retailers, chain stores from coming in and pushing out a lot of smaller businesses and local businesses. We also firmly stand against the inclusion of the Eugene McCabe Playground in the rezoning proposals. Both the Eugene McCabe Playground and the Henry J. Carter Specialty Hospital must be carved out of the proposal to rezone East Harlem. We also firmly believe that we should Avenue and include the currently carved out portions of North Park Avenue between 128th and 131st Street. Also, as George has stated earlier, if 116th Street is rezoned, that the public transportation must be the access points, stairwells, elevators must be folded into the building envelope, right, to allow for less congestion. All right. Now, finally, speaking to local economy, workforce development, we firmly believe that any responsible development in line with the community's interests must also provide boost to our East Harlem constituents in terms of employment and skills training. CB11 believes that we must utilize local community-based organizations for workforce development, training, and placement on East Harlem projects, establishing adequately funded workforce development programs which offer the necessary certifications and apprenticeships to take advantage of working on any crews that are working on any developments. We also, it is our position, our firm position, that at least 35% of any workforce on any of these projects must come from the East Harlem area, East Harlem community. The funding for community partnerships with it, we also believe strongly in funding for community partnerships with existing local reentry programs, right? To facilitate productive transitions for those of our friends and family that are returning to society after criminal convictions. Many of us here are very familiar with the collateral consequences, the impact that having a felony conviction will have on you. In terms of, it goes on and on, right? I mean, you can be discriminated against in housing, in employment, you're ineligible for public housing, you do not qualify for student loans if you want to go back to school and get your education. So we're calling for the funding of the community partnerships for those programs to specifically include them in these training and apprenticeships pipelines to enable those individuals as well to take advantage of any projects for productive employment. We also support the creation of tax incentive programs for commercial property owners to ensure growth of small businesses and to incentivize contracts with local minority-owned and women-owned businesses. And we also demand that the community maintain its engagement both before, during, and after any construction with regular reports to Community Board 11 to track the progress on everything that I just laid out to ensure that compliance is actually being met. So there is a more comprehensive narrative document that we have. So if you ever want a good read, or if you just want to fall asleep someday, you can take advantage. This will be part of the public record. We have a lot of what I just read are the bullet points. We expand on it. We talk more in depth, and it includes some other things as well that reflect the ideals and the core values that we found in engaging the community. But for now, this is for you to see a general overview and summary bullet points of where the community board stands with respect to any potential rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremiah. So, that brings a close to the task force's recommendations on this East Harlem rezoning that was provided by DCP. So we're going to move to the Land Use Committee, and you guys take it from there.
Can I ask him a question before you continue? We've already, I'm sorry, but we've had opened it up to the public, and we're on a committee, we're still now taking from the recommendation from the rezoning committee, and now it's being taken over for the land use, so like that I can also have, you know, what the committee wants to also weigh in on in their, any comments that they have, before we get into a vote.
May I just, if I may?
Sure.
Just also emphasize that what I just read certainly doesn't have to be committed to memory. It's going to be public record and available on our website.
And it's being recorded
as well.
live.
Yes.
I don't see anything there for the seniors, the senior buildings or anything. That's what I'm concerned about.
Okay.
But the
No
seniors
recommendations.
the seniors are in the main recommendations. Like, these are only bullet points, but we've definitely addressed our seniors in this community.
So we're supposed to be informed and know about it.
Thank you.
We're gonna have it all on the website as well, and the media will have the same information, okay? All right, so I'm turning it over to the members of the committee, if they have any comments or anything to say before we get into a vote. Can I get a motion?
No.
Make a comment. One of the things that all of these studies and everything that the city comes down with, as you know, these studies and recommendations from the city, be it HPD, DCP, they never have any adoption of home ownership.
Thank you.
Where people can actually own a unit to create a stable neighborhood. That's why your small businesses can grow, because they have a clientele that grew up with their kids. And I'd like to have some of that adopted in our statement.
I believe there was a stipulation in the ring that you have an option to own something in your apartment. Does anybody know about that you can share with some residents? I think I read something, it's called something, but when you're renting, you're able to sign on to some kind of form where you're able to buy the apartment over time. So there's something that it's in small letters, they're not going to... What's it called?
The HDFC.
Okay, there are options in your rent, agreements that you have to look in further to it. But there's options
All right,
like
but
that.
now, I'm sorry.
I'm
but
sorry,
it's
I'm
the
sorry.
committee,
I
you
just was
know.
going off.
Okay, I understand that, but let's do this in an orderly fashion, because we're really
That's
trying to carry this out, the agenda as accordingly that we always normally do on our committee meetings. Okay, thank you. Okay, yes, I know, but we opened it up to the public already. Now we're back now into committee. So I'd appreciate if everybody will have respect for us as well as a committee, because we do want to come down to a recommendation and to a vote. And we've already heard the recommendation, and we've heard the testimonies and your comments and your questions, and we're really taking this at heart. And believe me, it's not going on deaf ears. So we just want to make sure that our members of this committee also have their comments, and we'll be able to then, so we can do a collective vote tonight, okay? Thank you, I appreciate that. Okay, Alex?
I was just going to ask a question. Sorry if I missed this previously, but the New York Academy of Medicine study.
Can you hear him back there?
Apologies, I'm not speaking loudly. It does not surprise me that you reached the conclusions you drew. I was wondering if you knew, or for example, you note that the draft environmental impact statement only notes that 27 residents would be displaced. Was the Academy of Medicine in their 2016 study able to determine what they actually expect that number to be? Anything along
we didn't try and count the units at that point, but obviously we did identify that displacement was the most significant threat to health, and that 27 is obviously a very underestimate of what that risk is.
And just overall in general, in the health committee, we had talked about...
You have to speak loud, because...
In the health committee, we've had this discussion as well, and we also had tied in some of the findings from the study that was done by the East Harlem East Harlem Community Health Committee about the impact of gentrification on health. So that aligned with what they were finding as well, and we have forwarded that for inclusion in the process.
Any of the members, Alex?
Sorry, I realized I had plenty of opportunity to make this point before, and I only realized this today. So I think one of our recommendations should be that we can add to the recommendations would be largely not for our benefit at this point, because I think we're largely screwed. For the benefit of other communities that may face this, that to the extent that DCP is proposing a rezoning of an entire neighborhood, relying on the city's environmental impact statement process is probably insufficient. They should, in fact, provide for a community board or community organized review as well. And while we may not get the benefit of that, I think it's still something that we can include further, to further the point that we disagree with half of the conclusions they draw, or more than half, but also at least to make the case for other neighborhoods that may be suffering as well.
Thank you. Point taken. Francis?
The Environment, Open Space and Parks Committee sincerely appreciates the work done on Eugene McCabe Field. That field is constantly being used by youth people. The fact that they should put a high-rising tower on the periphery is unbelievable, and we believe it should be removed from the zoning study. Also, we acknowledge the work of Dr. Kimberly Lieberman at the Academy of Medicine, which brings to our mind the exact stress that density puts on a community, especially on our young people, and that should be taken into consideration, and we thank you for the work on that.
Yes.
Any of the other members have any comments or anything to say? Xiomara?
So I would like to make a motion that the Land Use Committee recommend to the full board to vote no on the DCP proposal unless recommendations outlined by the rezoning task force are met with the inclusion of home ownership opportunity and what Alex was saying about not relying on the environmental impact statement, but consulting with local stakeholders.
Can I get a second?
I second it.
Francis? Francis seconded. I'm going to ask the question. All in favor? Anybody opposed?
And only land use members can vote.
All right, so I'm going to make a roll call vote.
So just to clarify that there are committee board members here, but we are not members of the land use committee. So we do not vote on this motion.
So yes, Diane?
Well, I would like to ask the task force to stand so everyone knows who you are. And thank you. So the rest of them are going to be anything, just kidding.
And there's some overlap.
There's some overlap, so now you may do a roll call.
I'm going to call the names.
You do the roll call.
Adam Breha?
Present not voting. Do I have to disclose why?
No.
Okay, present not voting.
Holly Drakeford?
I vote to adopt the recommendation. Yes.
Joseph Goldblum?
Yes.
LaShawn Henry? Yes. Alex Cohen?
Yes.
Francis Mastrolis?
Yes.
Xiomara?
Yes.
Say your last name.
Say it loud.
What's your last name? Pedraza.
I'm sorry. I just got Xiomara. Robert Perkins?
Yes.
Chantel Sparks?
Yes.
Vincent Torres, excused. Stephen Villanova, excused. Candy?
Yes.
Jamal Ward? Absent. Jonathan Winston?
I'm going to abstain pending receipt of the text of the recommendation.
Okay. Diane Collier?
I do not vote.
Thank you.
Okay. Wonderful. So the motion passes.
So now you all know that we all collectively have voted against the whole city planning plan because it does not conform to our community's needs. So we need to then voice this out to city planning that we're saying no, and that we need, they got to go according to our plan, not their plan. So I hope that city planning takes into consideration of what we've outlined over here tonight, based on the rezoning and the additional board member that requested for us to include some additional requirements. And I hope that the city council, as well as the Manhattan Borough President's office, heeds to our conditions and to what we are requesting on behalf of East Harlem. This work is this is our community, and, we heard everybody. We live here, born and raised here, so we're shaping this community the way we want it for the future and the betterment of our children and ourselves, and like the young lady here, the seniors as well, because, we're going to be there as well, so we need to protect and preserve our community. So thank you all. Excuse me. Can I get over 1 minute, please? We need not end it.
Okay, give me 5 minutes.
So the final recommendation is coming on Tuesday at the full board. We took a position here at this committee level, but now it's going to be taken on Tuesday, June 20th at 6 o'clock at the Icon.
So let me just add, I'm not taking over the meeting, but just to let everyone know that this is clearly just a recommendation which they will present to the full board. All of the information that you heard here tonight, even though we weren't able to give you handouts, will be on the website, including the comprehensive discussion of the study of what all their findings. You may not have heard everything you wanted to hear, but clearly it's in that packet. So I encourage you to read that. But at the end of the day, this committee is recommending no.
No.
To the full board.
To the full board.
Right.
To the full board. So again, I ask that you come. There will be. I ask that you do come. I ask that you are also able to speak briefly, and everyone knows that I do say briefly in public comments if you feel you need to add something else to whatever we've said. But clearly, the full board will be voting on this, and it will be at Mount Sinai, as you said, the Gold Room Auditorium. Now, let me also say, there is a capacity for 200 people. And if we reach that 200 people capacity, we will not be allowed to let people in.
Okay.
And they do not have an overflow room because of the type of way they're set up. So hopefully, get there early enough, get a seat, leave 50 seats for the community board people to sit. And
almost 600 people. Why couldn't you have it there?
Where?
Sales Theater.
Who?
600 people.
It is where it is, Maria. It is where it is. I cannot at this point weigh in.
Okay.
They haven't adjourned the meeting. Let them adjourn.
Can I get a motion to adjourn? So moved. I'm sorry. I do have an announcement. We're having the housing forum for NYCHA, June 24 at Hunter College at 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. There's flyers there, so you can spread the word as well and also show up to talk about the NYCHA issues. Thank you. So,
motion.
Okay, I'm sorry, Francis. Seconded by Xiomara. All in favor? Aye. All right, guys, thank you.